So good morning, everyone. My name's Alex. I'm one of the two Adobe evangelists at the U of A at our Creative Campus. And Brian is here as well. He'll be manning the chat. I'll always ask questions as we go along. We love to answer your questions. We're here to help. And today we're going to talk about using InDesign. We're going to take a little tour of the workspace. We're going to see how the frames work. And then we're going to talk about working from a template to create a recipe card, a little 2-page recipe card. I guess I could show you all what it looks like. So let me open it. We'll be making this, except it'll be slightly different. So it's just 2 pages, but all the concepts that we're going to cover here are going to be kind of universally applicable to like newsletters or some sort of publishing spread. I just thought a recipe card was a little more consumable. I apologize for that. So let's go ahead and I'm just going to show you the page here has everything you'll need as a reminder. You don't need to look at it while we're doing the workshop. Just know that it's a resource for you, and we'll be posting the recording right above the agenda. So let's jump into InDesign. Here we go. So when you open InDesign, you'll be greeted with a splash page that has a ton of really great tutorials. If you're ever kind of wondering how to do something and maybe the way we showed you how didn't quite get you there, there's a ton of tutorials here, often which are the ones that we lean on to create this content. So InDesign is a publishing program. It's meant to quickly and nicely, aesthetically combine text, images, graphics into some sort of format, consumable format. Now, sometimes it's magazines, web publishing. People use them for websites, newsletters, email templates. But InDesign is your best choice when you're working with more than 1 page of text and images. You'll see that some of the stuff we do, you could probably do in Illustrator or in Photoshop, but InDesign tends to be more efficient and give you more tools to take it further, to make it reproducible steps and things like that. So let's make a new document here. We're not going to open the template up yet, although you're welcome to. The new document dialog is similar to a lot of applications here. You have your recents, you have things that you've saved, and then you have your formats, print, web, and mobile. So let's say you're making something that you want to print. You can choose letter size, the standard paper size in the United States. And on the right-hand side, you'll have choices where you can choose how many pages. Are they facing? That means, do they have a spine like in a book? Or is it like a single back-to-back or kind of more like binder style design? That's going to be your choices. And you can always change the number of pages and the styling of pages after the fact. But let's just make a 2-page document, non-facing pages, and you can make it landscape or portrait, vertical or horizontal. So let's go ahead and create. And here we have our InDesign workspace. If you've opened up InDesign with me, just confirm your workspace is the same by going to Window, Workspace, and make sure you have Essentials selected. If you have it selected and it looks a little weird, you can always do Reset Essentials. This is just the nicest way for us to be kind of on the same page with one another. All right, so let's do a couple of keyboard shortcuts. Let me turn my keycaster on. So this is a kind of a universal one between most Adobe programs, but I use Command or Control. Where is it? There it is. Sorry, I had to find the keycaster. Command or Control minus will zoom out. And there's my 2 pages. Command or Control plus will zoom in, and Command or Control 0 will fit it to the screen. While you're on most tools, but I just make sure I'm on the selection tool, if you hold spacebar, you have to be zoomed in a little, you will get the pan tool. That keycaster is going a little nuts. Let's change the style. All right. Well, now it's not working. That's okay. We're not going to lose time on that. So holding spacebar lets you pan around, which is a nice way to kind of quickly move around. You can also use your mouse wheel or your trackpad if you're on a laptop. But my personal favorite is just to pan with the hand tool. Okay, so InDesign works basically entirely with frames. And the frames kind of overlap in function. You'll find that you can do a shape frame and put type in it. You can make type frame and fill it with a color like a shape frame. You can drop an image frame and change it to type instead. But what we created for this workshop is a template made up of all these different frames. The yellow is a shape. The title is a type frame, and the X's, the frames with X's are image frames, but really they're just called rectangle frames. I just call them image frames to kind of help myself remember. And what this helps you do is create space that's meant for titles, graphics, and text. So let's talk about those 3 things. Okay, we'll start with the type tool. The type tool lets you draw a frame and type inside it. It stops. While you're inside here, you have your text formatting options. You can choose your font. You can choose your font style, if it has any. Let's go to Proxima because it always has a bunch. So there's our styles. And then font size, just a little tip. If you click inside the font number size, you can up arrow through them, which is nice. But if you hold shift and up arrow, it'll do it 10 points at a time. And you'll see that the frame that I drew wraps or confines the text inside that box. And if I make it too big, I'll see a red square with a plus sign telling me that I have text that is beyond the space I've given it. All right, let's shrink it down. Okay. You also have the indent options here. Here, let me show you guys. So let's say this was going to be a bunch of text. So what I can actually do is right click and fill with placeholder. And it'll fill with our lorem ipsum text. And then I can control the justification. It's got a few more styles where you can have it kind of space it out to fill to the edges. Kind of what you see is what you get. So I suggest you play with what you like. This is kind of nice. You have what's called a drop cap, where if you select your first word or letter, you can have the first word have that fancy drop cap with very little effort. That's just bonus. So that's type frames. And if you switch to your selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, you can resize the frame and it will adjust the type at the same time. It'll, I'm glad you learned something, Brian. So if I can teach Brian one thing, I've done my job. So, okay, you can resize this content. So let's just say we're going to put a bunch of text, and we're going to put a title above it. So let's switch over to a shape tool, the rectangle tool, which is M on the keyboard. And I click and drag here. And this is meant to kind of help you with your layout and design. So I like to just fill it. If you look over here in the properties panel, we'll fill it with a color. If you since I come from Photoshop, I like to use the, or Illustrator, I like to use the fill in the toolbar instead because it brings up my color picker that I am used to. So I'm going to double click the fill here. And let's use like a Celeste here. And then the second color is the stroke, which is also over here. And I'm just not going to have a stroke on it. Are there any questions so far? I find that the frames are familiar tools if you're used to word processors and PowerPoint, but please feel free to ask any questions as we work. So let's say I'm going to put the word title here and I want it centered, not only center justified, but vertically. So let's see how to do that really quick. I'm going to grab my type tool again, T on the keyboard, click in the shape, and I'm going to type title. A general rule with text, which is kind of reversed on me right now, is you usually want titles and larger text to be what we call a sans serif text, like none of these have fancy little feet. And then you usually want the larger bodies of text to have serifs. That's kind of a print rule because printed dialogue with serifs is usually easier to read. I'm not really sure if that's the rule anymore. All right, so I'm going to make the title bigger and I'm going to center justify it. But I also want to center it in the box. And to do that, you go back to your selection tool. And if you look in your, well, let's select that. Where'd it go? Okay, good. So if you look in your properties and you go all the way down to where it says text frame, you can convert it to columns, which is not what I'm looking to do. And you can adjust the gutter of the columns, which is also not what I'm trying to do. I just want to open up options. And I want to change the vertical justification to centered. This is one way that you could do this. You could also just draw another type frame and center it within the shape frame. I just like to have the one object there instead. Okay, do we need to see anything again yet? Now I'm going to grab my selection tool and move the text down here. And let's say this is dedicated for an image here. So I'm going to use just the frame tool, which I call the image frame for some reason, and just drag and drop. And now I've created kind of an outline for, I don't know, it almost looks like an information, it looks like a Monopoly card. I don't know, maybe I want to play board games. Yeah, so good point, Cheyenne. I said, I told you the rules and I didn't actually apply them. So let's go ahead and switch our font styles. Let's do sans serif on the title. Just for consistency. And on the body text, let's choose a serif. I'm just going to use typewriter. Ooh, that's kind of ugly, but that's okay. And all I did was click on the type box with the selection tool, and that opens up my properties panel to go ahead and make adjustments to the text. So you don't have to highlight the text. You can just click on the frame that it lives inside. So if I wish the word title was actually white, grab my selection tool, which is V on the keyboard, click on it. And over here, oh no, this is wrong because it's a shape tool, I'm sorry. For a shape with text, I do have to double click. I apologize. And then I can change the type fill to paper, which is white. So this could be a very simple template. What I do want to show you is how you can very quickly create columns or grids of images and text. So let's delete this type. And let's grab our type tool again. I'm going to click and drag in this space. I haven't let go of my click. And now what I'm going to do on my keyboard is use the arrow keys. If I press up, it adds rows. If I press to the right, it adds columns. And down and left removes. So I could turn this quickly into a 3-column body text. And then I could do type fill with placeholder to get an idea of what this will look like. So let's do it one more time, but this time with an image frame or just regular frame. I'm going to click and drag to the space I want to fill. And I'm going to arrow to the right. And let's say I actually I'm going to arrow up and make this 2 images. So you can very easily fill space with frames and let you get an idea of your design layout. And I can grab the selection tool if I want to move one down. They're not grouped together, so you can adjust them after the fact. Just like in a lot of Adobe programs, if you're on the selection tool, cool. I'm glad somebody learned a cool new trick. I really love that. It's almost as cool as the repeat grid stuff in XD. All right, so if you hold Option, you can also duplicate any piece of content quickly too. So there's these nice little ways to work quickly. Okay, let's see, type shape image. And I do want to show you one more little thing, because we're not going to do this in our project that we're going to jump into in a second. But a lot of people like to kind of get a little dynamic and put things in between the text and have the text pushed around. That's what we call wrapping. So let's just do that with a simple rectangle. I'm just going to draw it over here in my kind of pasteboard. And then I'll grab it and move it over here on my text. And it'd probably help if we put a fill in it so that we see that it's on top. So right now, this rectangle is just blocking the text. But if I look at the properties panels, so I have the rectangle selected. Under text wrap, here's my options. None, wrap around the bounding box, wrap around the object shape, because some objects aren't box shaped. So if this were a star, it would try and go in between the points of the star. Jump object, which means it will not have text next to it, but it'll go up and below. And jump to next column. So let's just do a round bounding box. And now this box is like a text repellent. The text will move around it based on its setting, which is a really nice way to kind of take your designs further. And you can change the spacing if you want a little more space. Like I don't like when the text is actually touching the edge. So sometimes I'll push it out a little bit. Just using these adjustments. I forget what they're called. Offset. Offset is the word. So what we've seen here is everything I did to create our template. It's not a lot of tools. It was a lot of repetition and choice making. So let's look at the template. If you want to take a moment, let's open this template up, and we're going to actually start putting it together. And when we put it together, what we're going to do is copy and paste text into place, drop and fit images, replace titles, and then we're going to talk about how we share it and export and package and all those things. And one last thing, if I wanted this to be a template for my 3-column Monopoly card, I could go File, Save As, and under Format, you just choose Template. And the difference between an InDesign document and a template is that when you open a template, which you will all see in a moment when you open the one I gave you, it doesn't actually open the original. It creates a new untitled document that you have to save as a new name and everything. So templates are these kind of non-destructive layouts that you can use over and over again without worrying about destroying or editing your original template. So this is really nice if you regularly output content using similar layouts instead of trying to do it over and over again or using an old one and replacing content. You can just use a template each time. All right, any questions? Because we're going to start dropping content in here. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So let's go ahead and start with the cover image. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to place images. That's what we call it. We call it placing. I'm going to show you the menu way, and then I'm going to show you the way that I prefer is to drag and drop. So if you have a frame selected, which you select, go ahead and select this big center one, and you go File, Place. And then you navigate to the Assets folder. And you know what, I need to walk back for 1 second. InDesign, it's highly encouraged to have your design file and all the associated files, the images and text within the same folder, because InDesign works by linking to files instead of actually copying them to the document, which gives you smaller files to work with and helps you generally keep it working quickly as well. We'll talk about how to change a couple things if InDesign ever slows down on you. But so if you notice, I have my template in here, and I'm also going to save my file in here. So we're going to place the tacos cover. So just one more time, because I went on a tangent. File, well, select the center frame, File, Place, and go ahead and choose tacos cover. And let's go ahead and click Open. And before we go any further, let's take a second to save our document. So File, Save. And I'm going to put it inside the same folder as all the images, and I'll name it Chickpea Tacos. We made these yesterday. They were pretty good if you're vegetarian. All right, so what you'll notice is I've placed a file in here. I've placed a linked file. I'm going to zoom in and pan. That's what this little blue hyperlink means. So if my file leaves that folder, my design will have a broken link and I will not be able to publish it. And it just placed it right in the center. So let's talk about fitting images inside of frames here. With your selection tool, if you click on the box, what you're adjusting is your frame. And your frame is basically a window that displays what's inside it. It's a mask. And I can use the direct selection tool just so you get the idea that, no, maybe not. I thought I could. Well, why isn't it working? There we go. So frames are just boxes that display something. And what you drop in there will not show outside of the border of it. So I'm going to Command Z to get back to normal. With my selection tool, when I hover, you'll see this target here. This is the object grabber. When you click that, content grabber, excuse me, it switches to this brown frame. And that's the frame of your image, which lets you resize it. And a big warning here, you do have to hold shift and drag the corners. If you don't, you're going to smush your tacos and make something that is not appetizing. So hold shift and drag it out. If you like a little shortcut, you can also hold option and it's going to drag all 4 corners out at the same time. And that lets you change the size with the brown border. You can also grab the object, the content grabber, and that lets you move it around inside the frame. There's a quicker way to do this though. And that's by using the frame fitting options in the properties panel. So let's just select our frame and go over here and let's see what these do. We have fill frame proportionately. It's just going to make it as big as possible so that there are no empty parts of the frame without stretching your image. Then we have fit frame, fit content proportionally, which means it's going to make it as big as possible without cropping any parts of the image. So if you see here, I have this empty space up here. Then we have my least favorite, fit content to frame, and it's just going to stretch it out and make it the exact same size as your frame. Proportions be darned. I think this works well for gradients and solid colors, but if anything that has a proportion to it, I don't recommend using this. Then we have this one that, I don't know, I don't have a lot of uses for it, but what it does is it shrinks the frame down to the size of your image. Then we have center, which it already did. It centers it vertically and horizontally. And then we have a newer one, which is called Content Aware Fit, which uses Adobe Sensei, Adobe's AI, like in Photoshop, to remove objects. And it reads the image, and to the best of its ability, it tries to fit it and move it in a way that makes sense. So let's try that out. Pretty good. I don't know if it did anything wild for us. So those are our fitting options. And I did say I'd show you more than one way to place an image. So did everybody place their cover image? Nice. All right. So now we're going to place our ingredients. So I'm going to pan down to ingredients. And again, when I made these, just so you know how quickly you can make these, I made a frame, a title, and the ingredient, and then I just clicked and dragged to select it, because this is a little different than what I showed you before. So, and then instead of copying and pasting 12 times, I think is how many it was. Let me remember. Yeah, 12. I actually used my move tool, and I mentioned this. I held option and I clicked and dragged. I think I don't have them all selected, excuse me. So I selected all of them, and then I clicked and dragged to the end. And then I used that same trick where I pressed the right arrow to add 5 more. So I pressed it 4 times, and then I pressed up once. And it doesn't quite look like, oh, hold on. I think I have to move it down. So use the right arrow 4 times, and then I pressed up once. And if you can see, there's these little dots showing what I'm going to get when I let go. And now I have 12 dedicated ingredient frames with titles and text boxes underneath. And it in literally seconds, right? So that's what I did there. And here, this is a table. I'll show you guys how I did the table in a second. All right, let's place some ingredients. So this is how I like to place things. I just grab them all. So however you like to select everything, Command A, click and drag. And then you drag over to InDesign. And when you do that, sorry, I have to download my files. You'll get this place cursor where it tells you how many files you're about to place. And all you do is click in each frame for each file, and it'll plop them all in there, which is kind of nice. I think you could also select all 12 and go file and place and select them all. I just think this is more fun. I'm not sure if everybody got them nicely fitted like it did for me. I think it might have remembered what I did. So you could go one at a time and fit proportionately, or you could just select a whole row like this and tell it to fit proportionately. So you can work pretty quickly. I'm excited to give you guys some time savers. That's wonderful. And it's little things like this that make you use InDesign instead of Illustrator or instead of Microsoft Word, right? Okay, let's place our last 6 images here, which is going to be the same thing we just did. So one more time, I'm going to go to the folder titled Steps, and I'll select all 6 and click and drag. And if you, like, I clicked and dragged and then click in InDesign. So it says I have 6 files here, this many, and I just click, 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 click. And again, be careful here that you don't select this type box that's empty for a reason. And you can do your fitting options. See if it does anything. Ooh, that was content aware. I don't like what it did there. So just make sure that they're fitting proportionately. Okay, while we're placing those, let's open up our Word document that is our recipe. And this is fine, right? This is usable, but it's just not, it's a little harder to read and it's not as nice looking. So that's why we're using InDesign. I also added a unnecessarily long story about chickpeas. Because that's what you're supposed to do when you post a recipe online. You make people work for it, right? But the reason I did this is to show you how we can thread text across multiple boxes, which will be really fun. But we're not there yet. Sorry, I get distracted and excited. So the next part is really just copying and pasting. So I'm going to copy this title, double click, paste. And then, oops, I want Word. I'm going to copy the subtitle. Paste. And then the prep time, I pre-filled. So all I have to do is say the prep time, cook time, and calories. So prep time 10, 30, 9:50. And it feeds 2 people. And we could, let's leave it like this. Ooh, whoopsie. Oh, look, my keycaster's working again. Okay, so prep time is 30 minutes. No, 10. Cook is 30, and it was 950 calories. And it feeds 2 people, and I can confirm that. All right, and then you would do your ingredients, which it's up to you. I think copying and pasting is kind of slow in this case. So chickpeas, small tortillas, lime, jack. Let's just call it jack cheese. I don't want to mess multiple lines. Black pepper, tomato. And while I'm doing this, please ask any questions. This is kind of just a little tedious part. Sour cream, Southwest spice, tomato paste, white wine vinegar. Wait a second. I don't know what one of these is now. I could make the font smaller, but I'm just going to call it white vinegar. And I don't know what that is. So let's look at our ingredients list. I guess that's vegetable stock concentrate. Okay, so generally, if this doesn't fit, what my choice would be to make the shape box bigger and make it 2 lines for everything, because you want to be consistent, or to make all of the font smaller. So in this case, let's see if we can make all of the fonts smaller in one go. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, there. So I just selected this row, held shift, selected the other row, and I just sized it down a little bit. Kind of nice. Okay, and then we would do the quantities, which I think we'll do later as we think about questions. And the steps again are a copy and paste. So step 1. And I have 2 double bullets. Your bullet menu options are here, bullets and numbering in the properties panel. You can do numbered, you have to select all of it, or you can do bulleted, or you can open up even more options and choose different types of bullets. You can do footnoting and other things. So I gotta type. I have this weird outline here, Brian, I don't know if you've seen this before, but this outline doesn't show up when we export. So I think it's something with my computer. So I'm not gonna worry about it. 2. I don't know how to count. Yeah, well, I'll show everybody preview mode once we get everything dropped in here. We'll see if that goes away, but I did test it and it goes away on PDF and publish. So, all right. Let's drop the last few steps in there. It won't take too long. So Zach, that's a really good question. My images came in with poor resolution when I did file in place. Most likely the first reason is that these images are really small, so you might be zoomed in more than me. Or it could be something that I wanted to talk about anyway, and you might have your screen mode or your display performance changed to fast or typical. And Cheryl, I see that happened to you as well. A lot of people are getting pixelated images. I'm not sure I'm working from the same exact files as everybody, but let's talk about this display performance and let's see what happens when we export out and see if they're no longer pixelated. We'll look at a couple things here. But first of all, if you're working and you feel that things are getting a little bit slow for you, you can go to View, Display Performance, and you can try different modes here. Fast display tends to, it removes the images completely. You just kind of know that they're there, but it will be the fastest. And then typical display will be this pixelated look like mine. And then high quality will give you kind of close to the fullest rendered. So did anybody try changing it from those to see if that made any difference for them? Beautiful. And again, that typical display, you'll see them pixelated to have things work quicker The end product will be exactly the same, whether you're viewing it on typical, fast, or high quality. So that's just your work view. But I'm really glad that we got to that naturally. I was about to talk about that. While we're talking about views, let's also talk about how we can preview this. If we want to get an idea of what the final product is looking like, we can go to View, Screen Mode, and we can go to Preview. And that will remove all of our frames, and we'll just see what the finished product will look like. So you can see my table has no cell strokes, and the text is going to be here, which we haven't added. The text on steps 1 through 6 still looks strange, but I'm going to call it a weird font thing and not get too hung up on it, because I did get hung up on it over the weekend. All right. Let's go back to View, Screen Mode, and Normal. You have a couple other. Bleed is what we call the area that your design shouldn't exceed the important parts. And I actually don't remember what slug is. I haven't made yearbooks in so long that it's evaded me. Brian, do you remember what the slug is? Those little slimy things that we don't really have here. View, Screen Mode, and presentation. Some people actually use InDesign to present things. So that'll give you a presenter view that I think lets you actually go through each page as a slide, which is kind of fun. Okay, well, let's go back to our normal view. Let's finish putting the steps in there, because that needs to happen. And I'm sure you guys need time to put your steps in there too. So while I'm dropping this in here, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I ended up with multiple bullets. I think Word has some. So I think I have the wrong type. There we go. And again, this text is too big. Let's look at the word. All right, Brian came in with the definition of slug refers to an area outside of the boundaries of the document page that can be used for any number of things, including job information, notes, agency logos, just to name a few. So that's where you put important information for your printer or publisher that will not actually be published. Thank you. I do remember this slide now. Let's look here. Until ready to serve. Okay. So I think I'm going to remove my bullets in Word. They're not supposed to be there. Before I paste the rest. All right, and all of these are a little too big, so we'll resize our font at the end here. You can also paste without formatting. Heat on this. Oh. All right, sorry, I found a typo and we don't want typos. All right, step 4, paste, and let's go to 5. So this is your time to place your content as well and ask any questions. I didn't delete my bullets. And I disagree with this microwave tortillas step, but you know, each their own. It does work. Thanks, Brian. That's why we work together. Okay, and step 6. So instead of trying to resize the type one at a time, I'm just going to get everything in there. And oh, this I should have done paste without formatting. I apologize. Okay. So do we want to take a moment to finish, or do you guys want to see how to resize these again real quick and then add the chickpea story? I don't want to go too fast if you're trying to keep up and place them as well. I got a thumbs up here. Let's go for it because we're going to have plenty of time for questions. So again, I'm going to grab my selection tool. I'm going to click and drag across the top three, hold shift and click and drag across the bottom three. And I'm only going onto the text. I'm not getting the title or the shapes. And then I'm just going to shrink it down. Oops. Okay. All right. Oh, I'm not in the type. And I think actually, let's see here. Almost there. So let's select them all again. I just need to get step 4 to fit. And the reason I know it didn't fit yet is because I had that red rectangle with a red plus in it. Okay, so our steps are there. I could probably go and do a little formatting to make things a little smaller, to make them fit with a larger font and easier to read. But that'll do for now. Okay, the only thing we didn't go and do was the quantities, which I think we get the idea for how to do them. So I'm not going to do that. Let's go ahead and do a table. I didn't show you how to make a table, so let's just make it all over again. But you could just copy and paste the tools that you're going to use to build this. But for the sake of knowledge, there's a few ways to make a table. I'm a drag and drop kind of guy, so I think I was a 3x3. Yeah, it was a 3x3 table. So I'm just going to go to table, create table, and I'm going to do 3 body rows, 3 columns, and I'm not going to have any headers or footers because I already have a header up there, kitchen tools and staples. If I click OK, this is similar to like our place mouse. Now I see place a table, and if you click, this is going to make it fill the space, however, so we don't want that. So table, create 3x3, and you just click and drag to the space that you want it to fill. You could also make a type frame, select it and go table. Oh no, hold on, you got to be inside it. Table, insert table, and you could put a table inside there as well, which is not my favorite way. Do we want to see how to do a table again, or can I go and format this? Okay. Actually, I got a yes, but I wasn't sure. So let's just do it one more time. Table, create, 3x3, and click and drag. Pretty nice. All right. You're very welcome. So kitchen utensils and staples. Co-his. What happened to this document? It's supposed to be kosher. I know what happened. I broke it when I did find and replace earlier. Sorry, everyone, I gave you a broken document. All right, so our bits are a strainer, and you can tab between cells. 2 medium bowls, paper towels to dry your chickpeas, a large pan, a small bowl, kosher salt, black pepper, sugar, and olive oil. The quantities are there, but I'm not worried about them. So I just type them in. That's just is how I like to do things. You can copy and paste as well. All right. So now we can go back to our selection tool and click on the table, and we can do some formatting. We can center it. I thought it's not doing it. Fine. Let's select everything and center it. Let's look at what we did for here. Actually, let's see if this works. I've never tried the eyedropper on type, but I'm pretty sure it works the same. I don't see it. Never mind then. Sorry, everyone. I won't go exploring. Okay. So over here we have size 22. So let's just go ahead and do the same. And I also wanted it to be bulleted, so I'm going to select it. Where'd my bullets go? Interesting. Needs to have a bullet menu. Might be inside our cell options instead. Okay. Let's go ahead and center these in the middle of the cells and turn off our cell borders just to be sure. And I think it can be a little bigger. It's on a separate page. I think the size 30 and okay. Let's right click, cell options, and text. So here I can find how to center them vertically inside the cell. So vertical justification, align center. So now they're in there. And strokes and fills, I want no stroke, so I hit the weight to 0. And I also have no fill, but you can put a color behind the cell if you like. It also has the ability to create alternating colors if you like. I think kind of like Excel and Google Sheets. Rows and columns. I don't know where my bullets went, but we're not going to sweat it. They used to be here. That's fine. And if you go to table options, table setup, that's where you can tell the rows to also have no stroke or alternating patterns, just to be sure, because I don't like the way that looks. I don't like to have the strokes for this particular thing. And then the table border should be 0. How are we doing on our table? Good, I see some thumbs up. So I can also go to type, bulleted and number lists, and apply bullets, and I can put them bullets on just like that. There's just usually somewhere you can click, and I don't know what I did. So again, I selected my old table, I went type, bulleted and number lists, and I applied bullets. And now they have those nice little dots. Okay, if I want to make sure I don't have any strokes on my table, I can go to window, view, screen mode, preview, and click off, and I can see that it will have nothing there. All right, view, screen mode, normal. We have one last thing to do in our design, then we share, and then we have time for questions, which is pretty perfect. So I've dedicated these 3 type boxes for my chickpea narrative. which I'm just going to copy and paste. So let's open up our Word document. And this is a story about a chickpea farmer named Alejandro. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy and paste. So Command C. And I'll show you a few things that I like to do with this. So I double click in here, I zoomed in, Command plus, and I panned with spacebar. And now we're just going to go ahead and paste. Command or Control V. So I like to do a little drop cap. So I'm going to click at the beginning and make this bigger, 2 lines. It's right here. It's the very bottom left drop cap. So at the beginning of every day, you can find me. And then you'll find that I need to carry my text over. I need to thread it to my other boxes. And that's the significance of that red plus, is not just to tell you that you don't have enough room for your type, but that you can also grab it and thread it. So what I'm going to do is zoom out, click on that red box, that red plus with my selection tool. I also clicked outside of, I got out of the type, and I'm going to click on that red plus. And now wherever I click, it will continue the text. I could click and draw a box and it will continue it there, but I've already designated a box for it. So I'm going to click in this one and it's still not quite there. So I'm going to click the red plus again and go to this box. And now you can see my entire type is threaded across those 3. Oops. I'm going to do it one more time, because it's good to know how. So I copy and pasted my text in there. I switched to my selection tool, clicked on the red plus, went to this type box and clicked on it, clicked on the red plus again and went to the other type box. All right, so Zach is asking an important question. Did I come up with an excessively long narrative? What I did was I found an interview with a chicken farmer and I did find and replace, and I replaced the word chicken with chickpeas. And that's also why the document got a little weird, because for some reason it ignored my highlighted text. So no, I kind of mad-libbed an existing one and cut it out to make it fit. But it's an interesting story about a chickpea farmer. Okay, now if I click in here, double click really. There's a few other things I can do. I forget, last line. There's one that I really like, space after. This is a really useful tool that I don't know what it's like in other word processors, but space after and space before describes the space after each paragraph, after you enter down. So if you see this, this is set to 10 and yours might not be. So if I set it back to 0, yours is probably set to 10, but I thought it would do it for the whole document. Let's select all just to be safe. So this space after targets the space in between each paragraph. And you can decrease it or increase it. And I just think that that's a super useful tool. And then it's kind of touching my image. I have a few ways to change that. I could change the indent. In this case, I think it makes more sense to change my image frame because my indent actually is fine here. I don't want to push it further away from that. So it's up to you, 6 or half a dozen, but I'm gonna grab my select tool and just shrink this frame in a little bit to give it a little space. Maybe the top indent I could push down. But that's basically it. Do we want to see anything again about how I placed things into my template or how I made the template? Because I'm gonna move on to the sharing options. And it's okay if it comes to you later. All right, see lots of thumbs up, beautiful. How do we do the drop cap again? What a great question. Let's check it out. So all you do is you go to the beginning of your text. I just double clicked. And if you look at your properties panel, it's down here and it's titled drop cap number of lines. And you just increase the number. Right now it's 1, so it's not going to get any bigger, but as it gets bigger, it goes. And then this one is how many characters do you want your drop cap to be? So you could have it be the first 2 characters. Generally the first character is fine. And you can make it as many lines as you want. Great question, Breck. Okay, so let's talk about sharing here. You can save multiple ways, but I find the share menu has everything we need. It's our universal symbol for sending out, for exporting. It's a rectangle with an arrow going up, like I'm uploading this. The quickest way to create a PDF is to click this and quick export as PDF, and you have your choices. High quality print would give you a high resolution one that would print nicer. Smallest file size would be one that is easy to email and share. I have no idea what PDF/X-1A 2001 is, but I would go between these two. Let's just make a tiny one. It'll ask you where you want to save it. Let's go to the same folder, and I'll just name it small. Generally, you can accept these as they are, but you can go and make changes if you want to the compression settings. You can add a password and anything, but generally you can just click export unless you're really crazy about PDFs and want to make a change. And if we look, I have a PDF here called Chickpea Small. If I open it, this is what the final doc looks like. My quantities are missing, but my text is there and it's all laid out pretty nicely. I would mess with my steps. I think I want this to be a bigger text. There are some auto sizing options that you can use that I'm actually not too familiar with. Okay, let's check out next options. Option or package is what you use to send to your printer or publisher, because this document, if I send somebody just this InDesign file that I've saved, which we haven't saved in a while, let's take a second to save. File, save. If I send it to somebody, they're going to get a bunch of broken images because all the images there are linked, which means that InDesign points to their location on your computer and displays them, kind of like a file browser within the project itself. You can choose to embed them if that's something you'd like to do. You just click on the image and say embed here in the properties panel. That makes your file much bigger. It literally copies that image into the document. So if you can help it, you shouldn't embed, but sometimes you might need to. So package puts everything together so that your publisher can print the high quality version of it. You can also print from PDFs. So if it's like a one-off, you can always send a high quality PDF. Share for review is pretty neat. What this does is it publishes it online as a kind of a PDF that people can comment on. You can see it says, share a preview of your artwork through a web link where others can view and provide feedback. So if I click create, it makes a link. I think I did one earlier, so it did take a minute. It's not going to show up. Okay, let's create it. And then people can comment. So say you're working on this with somebody or for somebody, you can get feedback in real time and in a permanent format where you can go and revisit it. So let's copy this link. Let's plop it in the chat. And let's see what that looks like. Here we are. So you see basically a PDF view, and you can drop a pin and make a comment. You can highlight and do whatever you like. So, quantities missing are fired. And you can leave comments. So that's very helpful for collaborating without having to go bring your computer over to somebody. Pretty sweet. And let's go back. We have publish online, which actually creates a link to a PDF. So saves you a step. Oh, what did I do? Here we go. So it saves you creating the PDF and emailing it to somebody. You just send them a link that it's a live link that anybody can visit. You can describe it, allow viewers to download as a PDF if you want. I would. And then you publish. And it'll be similar to the link I sent earlier, except you won't be able to comment. You'll just be able to view it. And here it goes. It's uploading. I don't know why. It broke when I dragged it up to this screen, but this used to fit in here. And then the last option was to export, which is just your general export dialog where you have a bunch of options. Some people use InDesign to create website layouts, so you can actually save the frames as slices and then open it up in Dreamweaver. But that's not here. And that is the gist of it. Let's see what's going on here. It's 92% uploaded. It just breaks when I move it up here. That's funny. So thank you so much for following along, for joining us. InDesign is a great tool. In my opinion, InDesign is one of the less intimidating of the Adobe programs. I think Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere have a bigger learning curve, but InDesign is kind of like a more predictable processor that just is a little more manual in some ways too. And thanks, Tamara, I'm glad you enjoy it. We have 18 minutes here. It is your time to have back and go have some lunch, or to hang out and ask any questions. Brian and I are here for a while, so don't be shy.